Pokemon as a game has not always been known for its logical mechanics. Like, how is this guy still 10 years old? However, one of the most logical changes they ever made, dynamic speed, may be one of the more problematic decisions from a competitive standpoint. As a quick history lesson, up until Generation 8, the speed of the Pokemon on the field were decided at the beginning of each turn and not changed until the next. For example, setting Tailwind would not boost your partner Pokemon's speed until the following turn. Anyone having played in today's metagame, however, knows that this is no longer the case, thanks to this dynamic speed mechanic, allowing for such changes to be effective immediately, meaning Pokemon that can change speed early on during the turn provide a great competitive advantage. So is this problem dynamic speed's fault? Or is it a problem with certain pieces getting certain moves, like the combination of Prankster and Tailwind, that make it so overpowered? Let's take a quick look at the current metagame. Tornadus and Whimsicott, the focal point of today's video, are the key factors in the current format that abuse dynamic speed. With their ability Prankster, they're able to set up Tailwind at an increased priority bracket, allowing their partner Pokemon to go that much faster. Now, this ability is so strong, we saw the two collaborating for a whopping 48% usage in day one of the Los Angeles Regionals and a 39% usage in last weekend's Italian special event. Now, is this a problem? But why is this strategy so strong right now? I don't know if problem is the right word, but it is definitely something that is incredibly overpowered at the time. Now, why am I bringing this up now? Right? I know that's going to be a big question because we had priority Tailwind, we had Murkrow in Regulation A, Regulation B, right? We've had these Prankster Tailwind pieces before. Tornadus has historically been strong. We've seen Tornadus Kyogre in every restricted format pretty much, and it's done its job. But why am I talking about this now? Well, right now, we have a restricted format in front of us with one restricted Pokemon allowed per team. And the biggest problem I find with this is you are not supporting a Goldengo anymore. Like back in Regulation A, it was you would get Tailwind up and Goldengo would click a move. Right? And I'm not saying Goldengo is a weak Pokemon by any means. Goldengo is a very powerful Pokemon. However, Goldengo is not a Calyrex Shadow Rider that has base 165 special attack with a base 120 spread move, right? It's you are supporting these powerful restricteds in ways that just shouldn't be allowed to support these powerful restricteds, right? If basically you are saying if I have Tailwind and my opponent doesn't have a way to match Tailwind as fast, I have an inherent advantage for 3 turns with some of the best Pokemon, with some of the most broken Pokemon in the game. That is incredibly strong. That kind of forces, in a way, to have some sort of speed control. We'll get into other options after. But at where it stands right now, the ability to have Prankster plus Tailwind, right, beside a massively powered restricted is disgusting. You are able to do so much damage with your restricted before your opponent even moves. It's incredible, and it almost feels like a must-have in the metagame right now. Now, yes, this happened in Generation 8 as well. Although in Generation 8, we had a little bit of a different mechanic where we had Dynamax, and then we'd have like Max Airstream. But the bigger thing is that I'm talking about here with Prankster Tailwind is actually it is no longer able to be stopped by Fake Out because a lot of the times Covert Cloak, which is a new item introduced in Generation 9, has become the staple item on Pokemon like Tornadus and like Whimsicott. And you're basically able to click Tailwind because you cannot get flinched by Fake Out. So there is realistically zero counterplay. If your opponent wants to get Tailwind up, 9 times out of 10, they're going to get Tailwind on the board with the Prankster Tailwind plus Covert Cloak combination. Now, there's a few little things that counterplay. You could be the faster Prankster Tailwind user and click Taunt before they actually manage to get a Tailwind up. Right? There are a few things that can still work to shut this down. But on a base level, the ability to get Tailwind up from one of your Prankster Covert Cloak Pokemon is ridiculously easy. And just this item alone, right? Because if I had an Incineroar in the field and I could Fake Out the Prankster user, it would be fine because my other Pokemon could maybe deal with this, let's say, massive restricted Pokemon, Calyrex Shadow, for example. However, not being able to fake out this Torn or not being able to fake out this Whimsicott allows them the Tailwind to basically go up without flaw, and allows that Pokemon beside the Tailwind setter to absolutely capitalize. And like I said, in the concept of the video is, back in Regulation A, it was a Goldengo. It wasn't too bad. But now that we have these massive restricted Pokemon, whether it's a Kyurem with the base 170 attack, which hasn't actually seen too much play, right? Whether it's the Calyrexes, either of the Calyrexes actually. Now, Calyrex Ice tends to be more of a Trick Room Pokemon. However, you can use it on Tailwind teams with the right speed iterations, right? And if you catch your Pokemon, your opponent expecting a Trick Room turn, and you go Tailwind and Glacial Lance, it's still going to hit incredibly hard. This is why I'm bringing it up right now. This is why I feel like it needs to be discussed. And guys, this is just a discussion video, okay? There's really no overall point to this video. We're talking about how good Prankster Tailwind is, some other options you may use, and we're just going to kind of go over things. And honestly, I'm curious your thoughts down below. Is this too overpowered? Is it too strong? If 48% of the board feels that they need to have one of these two Pokemon, is that too strong of a move? Is it too strong of a combination? Is it Dynamic Speed's fault? I want to say no. I think if you take away Prankster plus Tailwind, like if you take away Tailwind from the Prankster Pokemon, yes, okay, you still get stuff like Electroweb, Icy Wind, you still get Tailwind to go off, but as a whole, I think it becomes a lot less immediate, and there's a lot more counterplay to the speed controls, or to the faster speed controls. Right now, your best counterplay to fast speed control is to actually either match it yourself or set Trick Room. And granted, Trick Room is a very strong strategy, and it always has been, so it's always going to be a thing, and it's always going to be a reason why Prankster Tailwind is not sitting at 70-80% usage in tournaments, because Trick Room does exist, and Trick Room will exist as a better fit to other players' playstyles. Now, the problem with Trick Room, and why I want to bring this up, it's not necessarily a problem, but Trick Room, the move itself, has a -4 priority. Meaning, in order to set up Trick Room, you are going to be slow. Even if your Pokemon is the fastest thing on the field, in order to set Trick Room, you are probably moving last on that turn. So, Dynamic Speed doesn't really affect Trick Room all that much, minus a few niche interactions, right? Whereas Prankster Tailwind, it just goes, right? It's an immediate thing, right? I'm setting Tailwind, my partner's getting to go first that turn. Whereas with Trick Room, if I try to set Trick Room, my partner Pokemon is moving at its normal pace that turn, my Trick Room goes up at the end of the turn, and then I get to move first. It's a little bit of a different mechanic, it's a little bit of a slower play style, and it always has been. But why does Tailwind and why does Prankster Tailwind get to go crazy fast and be that much simpler to set up? Trick Room Pokemon are hurt by Taunt, they're hurt by Fake Out. Now granted, you can go Covert Cloak as well, right? That's not a big thing. But like, they're hurt by a lot more than Prankster Tailwind is. Is it a little lopsided? I think it might be. Other options are just regular Tailwind. And I'm a big fan of having that just a passive Tailwind piece, you know, whether it's a Zapdos, whether it's a Corviknight, whether it's, you know, just a Volcarona, which actually does have Tailwind again, right? They're just going to sit on the field, they're going to take a couple hits and get Tailwind up. The problem with this is you may just be regularly outpaced by some of the faster pieces in the format. Take Zapdos, for example. Zapdos used to be a relatively fast Pokemon, but nowadays you're getting outsped by the likes of Shenpao, Fluttermane, and those are massive attacks being launched into you before you're even able to get your Tailwind onto the board, which does not feel nearly as strong. Or if you're trying to run a regular Tailwind setter, now you have to look at the concern of, hey, they have Prankster Tailwind. So even a piece that's slower than my Tailwind setter now may just be moving before I'm able to set Tailwind up, and that may be enough to stop my Tailwind setter from getting Tailwind up at all because it's going to get O-code first. It is a very strong option to have this Prankster Tailwind the way Dynamic Speed works, and it may just be too strong because it kind of makes it feel like the other speed control options just aren't as strong anymore. There are tons of speed control options in this game. Icy Wind, Electroweb are two other strong examples that used to be very, very common in metagames. And granted, they still kind of are. And a lot of times you actually see it paired with Prankster Tailwind. You see Torn from time to time. They run Icy Winds from time to time, right? You have your booster Fluttermanes that they run Icy Wind. And sometimes, a lot of the times actually, it's you have that Icy Wind and you have your Prankster Tailwind user. It's not one or the other anymore. It's normally both. Now, you can get away with just one or the other, but a lot of the times that is also used in combination. And with that being the case, is it almost a spot where everybody needs to have either Trick Room or Prankster Tailwind? And that may be a problem. Now, granted, I get it. Speed control is one of the biggest things in VGC. It is going to be a constant state of the metagame. Speed control, controlling your board, making sure your pieces are moving before your opponents, all the like, or making sure if you're moving after you're bulky enough to take some hits. Controlling the speed, knowing the speeds is a massive part of VGC. So I don't think I necessarily want to remove Prankster Tailwind from the game, but I do think that it might be a lot healthier of a game without Prankster Tailwind, right? Now, granted, without Prankster Tailwind, does it just become, well, instead of having the faster Prankster Tailwind user, let's just have the fastest regular Tailwind user, and it's going to do the exact same thing pretty much. Then we're going to go back to the days where we used to have like Choice Scarf Tailwind. I remember like a week in Sword and Shield, we had Braviary where it was Choice Scarf Tailwind, and turn 1 it would set that Tailwind, turn 2 it would Dynamax so that it was no longer Choice Scarf locked into Tailwind, and abuse Dynamax mechanics for 3 turns. And then either at that point it was either done or it would have to switch off the field because it would be locked into Tailwind. So do we get scenarios like that if we lose the ability to have Prankster Tailwind? Do we lose that ability, right? Because if Prankster Tailwind is the fastest way to get speed control on the board, are we going to just simply have the new meta be 48% with whatever the new fastest way to get Tailwind up on the board is? And if that's the case, maybe the problem is dynamic speed. But long story short, guys, I'm going to wrap this up. This video has a tendency to ramble. It had the potential for me to ramble on a little bit about nothing. But the concept was I really wanted to bring it up because dynamic speed is incredibly strong. And with Prankster Tailwind, there's not a lot shutting that down. And that makes these overpowered Pokemon in Regulation G, those big restricteds, capable of doing so much more than if they didn't have that Prankster Tailwind beside them, than if they didn't have that dynamic speed, right? Back in the day, if you wanted to make sure your piece was moving faster, you would protect, and then you would Tailwind that turn, so the next turn you guaranteed to have that piece to move faster. It was a little bit slower, it was a little bit less fast-paced. Now maybe this is the balanced player in me talking, and I'm not saying that dynamic speed is bad. I don't think dynamic speed is bad by any means. I think, like I said before, it is possibly one of the more logical decisions the Pokemon Company has ever made. It makes so much sense, right? If I'm setting Tailwind, why would that not take place immediately, right? Why would that not take effect immediately? And I really just wanted to bring this up as a way to, as we're heading into NAIC, hey, Prankster Tailwind is looking at about somewhere between 40 and 50% of the board. Make sure you have your answers. We discussed it a little bit, guys, why it's so strong. And if you are not going to have your own Prankster Tailwind, I highly recommend you have answers to Prankster Tailwind moving into NAIC, and then of course moving into Worlds as well. With that, guys, if you do enjoy these types of discussion videos, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. It really does help with the channel, and of course I really do appreciate it. But with that, I'm going to get on out of here. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will catch you all in a future video.